Hi, this is Alex Porter standing outside of Molly Moon's Ice Cream on Capitol Hill, which is open, and I'm going to give a live tour of Free Capitol Hill, also known as the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or Chaz, just to give everyone a peek. I'm going to wait 1 minute just to get a few more people on here. So we'll get started in about a minute. Hey, Matt. Hey, Ernest. We're gonna get started in a minute once a couple more people join. If you're wondering, Molly Moon's is open. Come and get some ice cream. It's a beautiful day. I will get started in just a minute. Hey, Mike. All right, I'm gonna get going. My name is Alex Porter. I'm a resident of Seattle. I live on Capitol Hill in the midst of all of the protests and police violence that's been going on since last weekend. I'm standing out front of Molly Moon's Ice Cream, which is open on a beautiful sunny spring day in Seattle. I have been paying very close attention to what is going on the ground here. I'm seeing different things reported on the news, so I've been doing my best to share what I'm observing via my Medium blog. You can find me, Alex W. Porter, on Medium if you want to read some more details about what's been going on around here. But right now, I am at the edge of an area that has now been called, basically renamed Chaz, Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. This was the result of the end of an 8-day standoff between residents of Seattle and the police at 11th and Pine. I'm going to give you a tour of the area just so you can see what it's like here. I am happy to answer any questions, and I'll share a little bit of commentary and some updates on things I've observed over the time as I go. But as I said, the news is painting a very different picture than what I'm seeing. That said, even people who live here in the neighborhood in Seattle have concerns and questions about what this is going on here. So if you have any, please go ahead and ask in the comments, and I'll do my best to respond to those as we go. So I'm going to flip the camera and put my mask on. Bear with me a second. All right. So the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, known as Chaz, also known as Free Capitol Hill, is an area that basically begins here at Rancho Bravo. This is at 10th and Pine. It basically consumes the entire area where the protesters were originally in a standoff against the police. That flashing red light you can see in the distance is 11th and Pine, which is where the police standoff was. On Monday, when the police abandoned the East Precinct station and protesters were able to move through that intersection, the epicenter for the protest movement moved to 12th and Pine, just outside the East Precinct. I'm going to walk around all these areas throughout this live and show you more about what's going on in each one of them. But the lay of the land here is I'm at 10th and Pine. The closed-off pedestrian-only area goes all the way up to 12th and Pine, which is just outside of Manau Tai and the Cuff. And the area also includes all of Callie Anderson Park. I'll be walking over there and showing you some things that are going on there. And in the closed-off area, the streets are also closed 1 block to the south towards Pike Street. As you can see, it's open here at 10th because we're not quite in the area yet. And then it also goes 1 block to the north to Olive Street. That's the closed off area that is basically pedestrian only. So I'm gonna walk forward and just head on into the area. Actually, I'll go over to this side because there's a welcome sign. You are now entering Free Capitol Hill. That's the AKA for Chaz. Now, last night, the city and all the protesters worked together and painted in big white letters, Black Lives Matter, right here on Pine Street. And we are not the first to do that. Washington, D.C. mayor did that in protest for the violence against her citizens that the president ordered. Ours was painted white last night, and as you can see, it is now flooded with artists who are filling it in with different artwork, various colors. For those just joining, I gave a pretty long intro at the beginning, and this will be reposted afterwards. Feel free to ask any questions as I take you on a tour. Just looking across the street briefly, Rancho Bravo and many local businesses have played a major role in supporting the protesters throughout the movement. You can see tents over there and a lot of people. Looks like another food truck. There's some supplies on the sidewalk and signs about how to donate. All kinds of supplies have been donated throughout the protests. Everything from water to snacks to masks, gloves, hand sanitizer. Everything needed to safely protest has been provided by volunteers. There are volunteer medics around constantly that are all making this happen. And just watching it evolve over the past week, it has been very organized. Here we can see more artists. This one says, "For the culture." You can see it's a very calm atmosphere. As I've been visiting throughout the week, there's a lot of discussion about laws and policies and changes that need to be made. While it may seem disorganized, there is a growing organization. There's 2 websites you can go to get information about the movement and to donate. KingCountyEquity.com is the overarching organization that's really leading this protest movement and sort of coordinating with Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter Seattle is another website you can go to, blmseattle.com, to find out about protests and other things that are going on. So this intersection is where the main tense standoffs of the last week were occurring. The police took down the barrier they had here at 11th and Pine. It basically went from Stout over to this building with the wood on it. You can see on the ground here, it says, "Welcome to Chaz." There's artwork everywhere, murals on the ground, etc. This building over here is where the strangers' offices are. They're moving, but they used them during the protest to show live videos of basically the battle that was happening down here on the street. I just posted a blog post sort of summarizing my observations about the interactions between the police and the protesters over the past week. I recommend taking a look at it if you want to see what was happening before this rather peaceful scene that you see here today. This is one of the supply stands on the right. You can see tons and tons of food and snacks. It's like good stuff too. There's like fruit and name brand products. Everyone's really chipping in and making sure everyone's fed and safe, and throughout there's really been a sense of community and people watching out for each other and working hard to make sure that we stay safe as a community. Now the barrier of Chaz basically extends to Pike Street there. There is some local access for cars, but this street is closed. Right now I'm going to cross the line, which is where the police barrier was until Monday when they removed it. I just very luckily was here when that happened. I was getting dinner at Chipotle and just taking a tour of the scene right as it happened. So that video is included in the blog post I mentioned as well. So this area was inaccessible to protesters when it was barricaded off. The East Precinct police station is to the right here. This building was already one of the most colorful in the city, and now the rest of the city kind of matches it. Kind of an interesting amount of art has taken over, and it's really quite pretty. It's like walking through a gallery. I know it's graffiti. I know there's destruction. It's painful, but we we will fix it. And right now we're getting to see some incredible art. This is again, the East Precinct. You can see they boarded up the windows and put some substantial fencing on it. The day that happened, the sign was repainted as the People's Department. And it's being discussed whether this police station can be used as an example for how police and community can work together and basically turn it into more of a community policing setup. There's a lot of people talking about defund the police as a solution. If you look closer at what those statements mean, what's really being asked for by organizers is to allocate funding from the police department to other departments that need the money right now, that are community benefiting things. We have to look at our city's budget anyway because we have a huge shortfall due to COVID. So there need to be cuts. And there are specific asks called out on the KingCountyEquity.com website. I think it's KingCountyEquityNow.com. I apologize. If you want to go see what the specific asks are. But the best way to really get a sense for what is going on here is to calm down and listen to the speakers. So I've visited this intersection several times over the past 2 days, and there are always great speakers speaking. The organizers have a sign-up list with time slots, and every speaker I've seen has inspired me and taught me new things. And you can see there's just generally a crowd here that is gathering and watching whatever discussions are being given. I'm going to pause and just let you listen to what's being said right now for a moment.
Assume that shit and let it land and make some reflections on how we can do that. Our sustainability group is talking about how do we continue to be here, how do we continue to have this movement, and I think those questions are central. Because if we run too afar from what the Black community here in Seattle is and what they've been organizing around and the things that they're doing, then this loses its soul. You know what I mean? So we need to be considering those questions on an individual basis in our groups, in our affinity groups, whatever, in the organizations that we're a part of. We're also talking about how affinity groups are important because we all have things to be here. I'm a big person about transforming justice and accountability processes to replace this.
So I'm going to continue. There's a lot of questions from the public about how is this organized? How does this continue forward? Those are the same questions that are being discussed here. And I'd say a lot of the community organizers and leaders that are working on figuring out a strategy, this is really the epicenter for really having a forum around that and an open discussion. This is super random, but earlier today I was just thinking about the forum that exists here and that we don't really have one of these in society where people of all classes and colors come together and have an open dialogue about what do we want to change about the city. So it made me think back to like the Roman or Greek forum and how important that was. So anyways, that's a total side tangent, but it's been pretty cool to see people talking with each other and working to figure things out. I'm gonna go up to this gate real quick. I think I'll stick to inside the area so that I don't have to walk too far with this live. One of the concerns that someone asked me a question about, it was Casey, who can't join the live, is residents of this neighborhood have suffered quite a bit. 8 days of violence and smoke bombs and fireworks and tear gas going into residential units. It was really horrible. And while this forum is really great, it is a 24-hour operation. And for instance, at night at this intersection, they set up a projector and they're showing TV shows and movies that teach people about race, such as 13, the new Netflix show. I haven't seen it, but apparently it addresses some race issues. So for people in this neighborhood who live especially close to this, I definitely understand concern that this is ongoing and loud. I think the message from the group is they don't want to stop until some of the major changes that they're looking for have been implemented. And this is the other gate. So there's gates at each one of the side streets surrounding this area. There's not a lot going on at them, but they basically define the area that is people are calling the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. So now I'm walking west on Pine Street, back towards the 12th and Pine intersection outside the East Precinct, where the police have vacated the building. There's comments about ID checking and guys with guns. I have seen one person with a gun. There were announcements the first night that private security had been hired. I'm not sure of the current status of that, to be honest, but there is no ID checking. This is an area that anyone can come and go from. As you saw at the very beginning of the video, I walked right in here. This is not a controlled crowd. It's a free area for people to come and go. Here's the entrance at 12th Avenue Arts Building. You can see that substantial barricade off in the distance. That is, that's the one the police had set up to keep the protesters out of this area, away from the East Precinct. There was concern that these crazy protesters would just burn down the police station, but that was not the objective, and that did not happen. The Stranger said it best in their summary. Organizers asked the protesters not to burn down the police station. Protesters were cool with that. I'm gonna head to Callie Anderson Park just to show you what's going on there. This is basically the same thing here throughout the day. In the evening, there's more speakers. There's often live music. There's always people talking about what changes we need to make as a community, how to keep momentum going, how to be organized and speak with one voice. All kinds of interesting discussions going on. You can see several going on right over here. I'm headed down the steps from that main area to Callie Anderson Park. There's free water, bananas, everything is free. It's one of the nicest days of the year, really, today. Amid the pandemic, I think people have also just been excited to get out. Glad that it's around a good dialogue. Yesterday I saw a woman painting this. She had some music going, she was dancing, she had an audience. We can certainly fix it when the time for that comes. So here across the field you can see is a supply area, first aid. If you want to donate, the best way to do so is to overarching organization is kingcountyequitynow.com. If you, there are also Venmo accounts that are specifically for each of the medics that have been supporting this, so you can support them individually. They use that for supplies as well. There are porta potties that have been brought in all around. The last thing I'm going to show you is this area over here where part of the park is being basically taken over and turned into a community garden. I don't know what the deal is with the tents. I think many protesters are just camping out here. So these gardens are being planted in COVID 6 feet separation circles, which is kind of ironic. So there's just 2 of them. They basically took 2 of those circles and have established that it's a community garden. You are welcome. There's a bunch of people here yesterday putting this together. This is where we watch movies in the summer. We'll figure it out. All right, I think that about wraps up the tour. I'm gonna stop in the shade and take a look at questions, answer any additional ones that have come in that I haven't answered in my discussion. Hi, it's Alex Porter. I've been reporting on what's going on in Free Capitol Hill, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, also known as Chaz. I will be posting this video. The song Call on Me is playing in the background, which my friends will really enjoy. Let me scroll through. Thanks for complimenting my hair. How do you sell a flat in that area? Well, it's probably not the best time to do that, unfortunately. But the real estate market is up, so probably can. I was not with a guy named Eric, and I was not thrown out. Zach Baker asked if there's any sense of the community wanting to appropriate this area long-term or seen as a temporary use. I haven't heard any discussion. I do think the city's been doing a lot to create pedestrian-friendly streets. It was before COVID, and during COVID, the city shut down several residential streets to make some residential areas or give them more walkable areas. As a resident of this neighborhood, I actually love that some of these streets are closed and think it would make sense to look at potentially permanently closing some of them, because it is our nightlife district as well. And there's always issues with not enough space on sidewalks, especially as bars are closing. There's some comments about ending this terrorist occupation. One of my goals is just to show you what is actually happening here. You can draw your own conclusions. Someone asked what the demands are. I do speak to it in the video. Go to kingcountyequitynow.com. Yeah, one comment, Erica commented the gates are there because a car drove into the protest and shot someone. So there are gates around the area, and protesters throughout the week have had to protect themselves from outsiders and police, and have done so by barricading streets with cars. The police also had barricades, so all of the barricades have been kind of reorganized. The city is obviously aware of this and supportive of this to this point. So it's not like the city is fighting this. Someone said, I wonder how long it will be, it's Darren Lockery, how long it will be before gangs and radical groups move in and take control now that there's no proper protection. You know, that is a concern. The group here, and if you listen to the speakers, a lot of them talk about needing to prove that this is basically the world is watching, and we need to prove that the community can work together and make positive change. Now, there's a lot of misinformation and different groups and people trying to hijack things or undercut things, so it is certainly a concern of this getting hijacked and turning violent. Again, when people say defund the police, they're not talking about completely eliminating police. They're talking about reallocating funds from the police department to other social programs that can benefit our own communities as opposed to just funding violence against our communities. I'm just reading comments, making sure I've addressed everything. Please feel free to add another comment if there's something else I haven't addressed. Erica mentioned that the cops gassed her apartment for several days, so as a resident, this is a much better situation. There are dozens of complaints to the police department about using tear gas in a residential neighborhood that has families and babies and children. Thanks, Michael, Clara.
Okay.
So Darren Lockery said, I don't blame them for gassing the protesters. To be honest, from what I've seen, they weren't as peaceful as they make out. I've been here on the ground. I just live in the neighborhood. I was not part of this movement. I was basically drug into this movement by living in the battlefield that existed just up the street from my apartment. I posted a summary of my observations of the interactions between protesters and the police on my blog, which is on Medium, at Alex W. Porter, if you want to go find it. That's my on-the-ground observations about what the police were actually, just basically the confrontation between the police and the protesters. Jeannie Savel says Seattle has great drag queens. That is very true. Angie Lynn asked, are there any children living or visiting the Chaz? Yes. It's in a residential neighborhood, and it's a very safe place that families are bringing their children to be part of an active discussion around the changes that we want to make to our community. April Marie, thanks for the thanks. And I agree, I'm doing this to provide some real information about what it looks like here because it sounds very different on the news. Dominic says the city doesn't agree with this. He lives in Seattle and went to Seattle Central Community College, which is right over behind me, and that it's crazy. I think the city is figuring out what to do with this, and I think the city is having active negotiations with organizers, and organizers have a seat at the table, and changes are being made. So I'm not sure how the city doesn't agree with it if they're actively negotiating with this group. How will Chaz change tomorrow for the BLM march that is planned tomorrow? There is a big BLM march planned tomorrow. Go to blmseattle.com to get the details on that. Throughout this experience, the crowd size has varied. On the first day after the standoff ended, this field behind me was completely full of people, and they were all listening to great speakers talk about their experiences as Black people living in Seattle, the changes they would like to see made to various laws in the city. So since that is a well-publicized march, I would expect it's going to be very crowded. I can't predict how that will be managed, but The marches that do happen are still in coordination with the police. It's not like the police have like abandoned the city. I participated in one march. It was a great opportunity to see some great speakers, to see how organized the march leaders are, how they communicate with the marches, and how they work with the police to make sure that the people of the marches stay safe. The police are there and participating to make sure that intersections are clear and that people stay safe. And the march I walked in, the organizers made a very important effort to call out that the police were working with them to help protect them, and that they even introduced them by name. They're real people. They're part of our community. So that's what I have to say about that. Alex asked if I am a part of the community. Yes, I live on Pine Street, which is where all of this is happening. All right. Well, I've been doing this for about a half hour. There's some requests for me to go elsewhere, but I have already visited all of the different areas of the protest. If you have further questions, you can, or you're watching this later, you can put them in the comments and I will do my best to answer those. I will be saving this, and I will be posting it to Facebook as well so that anyone can rewatch it or share it with other people. So stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for everyone for joining. I really appreciate it. Again, my name is Alex Porter. I'm a resident of Capitol Hill here in Seattle. Thanks again. Take care.